I thought I would take my old belt and just experiment trying to do a hand lace, and I got it a little loose. I didn't really have a needle, so I was using a paper clip with a loop in it to pull through. Then I realized, well, heck, I could just make this longer and make a needle, so that's what I'll do next time. But I wanted to get a little bit of experience with this, so I could have got that lace tighter, but I also wanted to see how strong this was going to be. What this string is actually it's actually Teflon tape. And what I did was I just took a length of it and I clamped it in the drill press over here and ran it and twisted it into a string. And I wanted to see how strong that was going to be, and that's really strong. I'm putting all my weight into that trying to pull it apart, and it's not even really stretching. So I think that's what we're gonna go with. I'm gonna go ahead and cut some lines in here when I do the real belt, and that's going to give me the little recesses. I actually saw how to do this on a Ghosties video. So if you want more information on how to do this belt lace, this hand belt lace, go ahead and look him up. He did a nice video on how this is done. He did it on leather belting, and this is the rubberized cotton transmission belting. So to make the holes in this, actually what I did was I used the drill press with a little drill and just held the ends of the belt together and punched them right through, and gave me a decent little hole, because this stuff is pretty tough stuff. It's hard to cut, and it's incredibly strong, and I don't think a punch would have done very well to make those holes in there. So yeah, just a little tiny drill bit in the drill press is what I did. The other drill press, the crappy drill press that I don't like, but it gets the job done on certain occasions. Alright, see you in the next clip. Well, as you can see, the belt's staying in place just where it needs to be, and we can move it. Stays right there, tracks very nicely. Move it back to the idler, and it just idles along. Still haven't put my shifting forks back together, but that's all they're going to basically do is move this belt. Uh-oh. Looks like I fucked up. Our lace has failed us. Oh well. We'll give it another go. Well, as you can see, the string itself I used on this belt has failed. But the actual lace itself didn't really actually fail. This wasn't actually string. This was an experiment I was doing. This was that Teflon tape, and I doubled it up and I put it in the drill press and I turned some string out of it. Otherwise, this worked very nicely. So once I got some proper string on there, looks like I got me a drill press again. And yeah, like I said, this is all set up so that I can take this motor and pulley and shaft and everything off of here as a unit, and I can mount that up on the wall, on the ceiling, or under the bench, or might ditch it all together eventually, because I would like to have a whole little line shaft machine shop one day. Don't know if I ever will, but I would like to. And I'm going to try and go up. I saw somebody on Craigslist had some line shafting and an old blacksmith shop that's being knocked down. So I want to see if I can maybe get me some line shafting and some more machinery. But for now, the mini camelback lives again and is able to drill some holes. Lots of little things that still need to be done here and there. As I said before, shifting forks, gotta have them back. Not really, but I want them back. And just little tweaks here and there. Eventually I'll probably get around to doing these bearings and melting some Babbitt down. But she's back to a point where I'm pretty happy. For all intents and purposes, this machine is restored. It's restored to working order. Restored to pretty much how it would have looked like, you know, back when it was still in mainstream use. I still want to go around the edge of this table and put it bright again as it was in our catalog photo, and would like to do some more lapping in and flattening of this, but I've got some more testing and things I gotta do, but for the most part this is done. Yeah, so the next few clips I'm just gonna be fooling with this some more and getting things dialed in. This bearing is actually getting kind of hot, and so I'm a little worried about that. But it'll probably run in. I don't know. I'll keep lots of oil in it. And yeah, probably should be okay. And if it's not, I can always remake that or repair it. Not really a big deal. Okay. So you may remember I mentioned in another video that in looking at our old catalog photos here, that the edge of our table appears to be bright. So I decided I was going to do that. I went ahead and I took a razor blade to the edge of this table to get rid of some of the paint, and that's what we've got underneath. And fairly rough. See if I can get it to focus. There we go. I've got a fairly rough cast surface, but it looks like they did go over that and just grind it very minimally. Now, we've got a fair bit of meat here, enough that we can, I think, come through with a file and really clean that up real nicely. So, I'm going to keep working on this and get this ugly paint off of here. Also, when you're taking paint off of a machine surface, I like to use these little razor blades, because remember, this machine surface is usually pretty flat, so see, even that was taking some gunk off of there. Even after I lapped that, still gunk coming off of it. But I'll, like I said when I was doing this table, we're not done there. So I'm going to keep on doing this, and you should see the results pretty soon here. Now, as you can see, we've got it in the vise now, and all I'm doing is I'm just going over this edge with a file and taking off the remnants of the casting scale and everything. So as you can see, that's much nicer, and doesn't take a lot of work to do this, really. So once I get the edge of this tail filed down smooth, I'll move on to the next step. You know, 100 years ago, when this drill was new, this was probably some poor little apprentice's job in the factory there. He's going through and filing that casting scale off. And you know what? I bet you it got old for him just like it is for me, real quick. And he wanted to get it done, as many of them done, as quickly as possible, leaving me 100 years later to come back and finish the job. Just a quick note when you're filing. As I'm filing, I like to come along, every 20 strokes or so, and give the file a good wrap on the vise or on something solid. And what that'll do is that'll shock your file, and it tends to knock a lot of the gunk out of there that builds up. So you're not having to card as often, and you just have an all-around better filing experience doing that. It will chip up the paint on your vise if you have any paint on your vise, which I'm not a fan of having paint on a vise myself. Any vise I've ever fixed up and cleaned up, I've left unpainted. Just oiled it, because they always get messed up and then they look ugly. But that's not going to hurt the vise much. Just, you see little tiny dings on it. That's not a big deal. Alright. Almost completely through with the filing here. And then I'm gonna come through. I'm gonna hit this with some emery, and then we're gonna polish it up with a wire wheel and a little bit of oil. Okay, so we're almost through polishing with our emery, and we're getting a rather nice finish now. So we're almost ready to move on to the next step, and that is going to be, as I've mentioned in a previous video, wire wheel with a little bit of oil on it, and it's going to polish this up quite nicely. I'm going to do the top as well, so that everything looks good. And so probably the next time you see this, it'll be back on the press. Okay. Well, as you can see, our table is now cleaned up. The edge has been finely polished out. We didn't get rid of every single casting flaw, but we weren't trying to. And if you did try to, you would just mess the whole thing up. So if you're doing something like this, be careful not to take away too much. But we had a lot of meat here to work with, so we got most everything gone. Just a couple little bubbles here and there. All the old grind marks from the original parting line on this casting, and there was even remnants of a couple of gates on here that we filed off. And yeah, now everything is nice and smooth and shiny. Cleaned up the top some, but not much, and it still really needs to be lapped or lapped some more, or maybe machined in a little bit. But this is fine for now. And it looks good, which is, part of the concern that I had undertaking this project anyways. I just wanted to, I wanted it to look as good as it functioned. So, anyhow, still a little more work to be done here and there. Got to put my belt back together. And I'm looking around for some proper string with which to do that. That won't fly apart when I'm running the drill. But overall, I was quite happy with that hand belt lace. It ran very, very quietly, and in the previous clip when we had this running, you could hear when I kicked it in, you could hear this lace click, 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 click. When this was just more of a dull thump. So I may replace this belt soon, but I don't mind the slow click as much. It was that fast click on the high-speed belt back here that was really bothering me. Okay, well, I'll see you in the next clip. I'd like to talk for a moment on why I like to use the oil when I'm polishing with a wire wheel. There's actually a couple of reasons for that. For one, it actually keeps down on the dust. Anybody who's ever used a wire wheel on anything that was even a tiny bit rusty knows that as soon as you touch it off, it just fills the air around you with the finest, nastiest tasting rust dust that you've ever had the pleasure of trying out. So it takes care of that problem for the most part, and keeps that stuff localized. The other reason is that because most metals are actually porous to some degree, and cast iron especially, what that does is it works oil into the surface of the metal and helps to prevent rusting and things long term. The other reason, and the third reason that I think that this works better, is that it almost works like a little bit of a cutting oil and sort of a lapping compound, because the gunk that you get off of the surface is going to have some abrasive qualities to it. And holding that in suspension in the oil, you're actually utilizing that to your advantage to polish the metal below. And because of this, I believe that you get a little bit of a finer finish. You know, with a wire wheel, especially high-speed wire wheels, if you're not careful, you can bugger up your part because the wire wheel could just be too harsh on it and will start tearing away at that metal. So, that's the reason I like to use a little bit of oil. Now, as far as the kind of oil that I use, I don't think it's super important. I usually use a little bit of whey oil, but just about any thicker oil is good. You don't tend to want to use a thinner oil because it's going to fling around and fly off the brush more and make a little bit of more of a mess. So, just a little tip there. For doing this type of work, you know, where you're doing a lot of polishing and cleaning and stuff, and you're using wire wheels, give the oil a try. And I don't think you will be disappointed. I've taken the wire wheel to this table here just to clean it up a little bit, the lower table. And now that I can get a better look at the finish, this was certainly done on a shaper. And they had that sucker on a heavy feed and a heavy cut. And I bet they just took the scale off and they left it at that. So, it'd be really nice if I knew somebody, or if I had a shaper, that I could put this in and I could go over and put a nicer finish on this. And, you know, in the same setup, you could do the table as well. But it'll be left that way for now. It won't be used often, this surface, but as I've said in another video, you know, having this lower table on here is handy when you have a smaller drill like this, because sometimes you need to get something under there and it just won't fit. So, alright. Okay, so I just wanted to show this real quick, and this is why this quill bearing is not really a huge issue, and why I'm choosing not to do it as of this point. As you can see, we have our assless Jacobs chuck. I'll do another video on this chuck, perhaps in the future, but I call this the assless Jacobs. And we have a rather long shank drill in here, but we just needed a nice accurate rod to run our indicator on. And watch as I spin the drill. We're only reading about 1/1000th of run out on that, which is excellent. And this goes to show that even though the bearings might not be in the greatest of condition, your drill still has the capability to drill a damn straight and accurate hole. 90% of the time, if you mess up drilling a hole on a drill press, it's operator error. You center punched it a little bit off, you know, your drill was a little bit improperly ground and decided to walk on you, and all sorts of other factors that can come into play with that. But it is not the fault of the drill itself. And, you know, 1.5 2/1000ths accuracy is almost as good as anybody can ask for with any drill, when you're especially using a Jacobs chuck. You know, Jacobs chucks inherently have, you know, 3 to 5 thousandths of run out just in the chuck itself. So I just thought I would show you this real quick for any possible naysayers out there that say, you need to re-pour those bearings. Well, no, I don't need to re-pour the bearings. Screw the paint up. Have to redo the paint. Of course, so, I never did this paint. This paint was not me, but I don't mind the color too much, so I'm leaving it. Alright. Well, that's it for this little clip. Okay. Test drill.